Recently, I wanted to make an investment into the 1inch token, and before investing in any cryptocurrency token, etc., I like to test out the product to see it for myself. And this was no different. I went to the 1inch exchange and I tried to make a transaction or a trade to purchase a couple of 1inch tokens. However, what I started to notice is that on the 1inch exchange, the gas fees for executing my trade were much higher than if I just went to another DEX directly. So if you don't know, 1inch is a DEX aggregator, which means it looks at all of the liquidity pools from every single DEX and it tells you which one would be the best to route your order through. So it will then take that order and put it to the best exchange to fulfill that order, and then you will get your tokens. And so the reason why 1inch is more expensive than another DEX such as Uniswap, if you just went through the DEX directly, is because 1inch is an extra intermediary between that DEX. And so I wanted to figure out how I could lower those gas fees so I could understand why people were using the 1inch exchange. And when researching how I could lower those gas fees, I found the Chai gas token. So if you look on the 1inch exchange website, you can actually see that on every single page, on every single token page, whenever you're trying to make a trade, you can see this message here that transactions on 1inch are up to 42% cheaper because of the Chai gas token. And so this is what led me down the rabbit hole of trying to understand what these gas tokens were, how I could use them, and what benefit they provide overall to any Ethereum transaction. And I also found later that there are actually speculative ways that you can invest into these gas tokens to trade the gas fees. So if you did not know, gas fees on Ethereum are changing all the time depending on how much demand there is to process a transaction. So people are willing to pay more gas to get their transaction through faster. And whenever there are a lot of people waiting in line basically to fill their transaction, then people will bid up the gas price to try to always get to the front of the line. And you can actually speculate and trade based on these prices, which I'll talk about at the end of this video after I explain how the gas tokens work and what you can do with it. But before I get into the video, make sure to use my 1inch exchange referral link down in the description down below. If you already use 1inch, all you need to do is just click that link and then I will get a little cut of every transaction that you make. It's not going to add any extra fees for you, but it does support the channel and it does make it so that I can continue to produce these videos. And so not only is there the Chai gas token, but in fact, there are other gas tokens as well, which is how I found the Gastokens.io token, which is GST2 as its ticker. And here you can see the price of GST2 over time. It has gone up substantially, and that is mainly due to the increase in demand for these gas tokens. So how do gas tokens work? Well, basically, there was a research team at a university that initially made the discovery and the invention of the gas token. And if you would like to learn more about how it operates technically, I'm not a blockchain developer. So if you want to get more in depth into the technicals, you can go to the link down in the description down below, or you can go to gastoken.io and you can read about it in much more depth. However, just a quick summary of what it does is basically what you can do is you can lock a transaction price whenever you mint gas tokens. So let's say, as I was mentioning before, the price of a transaction oscillates all the time depending on the demand to get your transaction through. So here you can see a chart of the GUI gas fees on the Ethereum network over time. And you notice that if you go back to here, which is at the end of 2020, the prices were around 20 GUI to get your transaction through, whereas now the average transaction price is something like around 100 to 150 GUI, depending on how much demand there is on the network. And that's just purely because more people are using Ethereum now than they were back then, and they're willing to pay more to get their transactions through. And so what these gas tokens can do is you can go to the contract. So if you go to etherscan.io, and then you go to the Chai gas token, or if you go to GST2, which is the Gastokens.io token, then you can go to write a contract. So it will initially be on transfers. You can go to write a contract and you can mint these tokens in order to lock in the current gas price that the market is creating. So let's say that I decide to mint these tokens and the current gas price is at 20 GUI because there's very low load on the network. So let's say I did this back at the end of 2020. Well, now the gas prices are hovering somewhere around 100 to 150. And so that means that if I decided to use this gas token now, I could fulfill a transaction for the price as if it was currently 20 GUI. Now this sounds very good initially, it sounds too good to be true. How could I use the gas fees from back then at this current date? However, it does get more complicated than that. And this is sort of where my knowledge gets to its limit of how these gas tokens work. However, basically, in order to really get a good return from minting gas tokens, there needs to be a very large difference in the price that you mint these tokens at and then later use them. And of course, you can just purchase these tokens off of a DEX instead of minting them yourself. And most of the time, that's generally the best way to do it. But there are other costs in using these gas tokens that makes it so if I mint these gas tokens at 20 GUI, whenever I use it, let's say if the current gas price is at 100 GUI and I decide to use my gas token, then it's not technically going to be exactly 20 GUI, it's going to be slightly higher than that. So I think it would be somewhere around maybe 60 GUI, but that's still less than if I had paid the full price at 100 GUI in order to execute that transaction. So what are ways that you can benefit from these gas tokens? Well, first, you can benefit from these gas tokens in order to make transactions cheaper. So if you trade on DEXs all the time, you've probably noticed that the price for gas has gone up substantially as there has been more load on the network. And so you might want to look in these gas tokens to see if by utilizing them, you can lower the fees that you are paying on whatever exchange that you're using. And that could be a huge benefit for you. But there's also a speculative nature of these tokens where there are a couple of things that you can try to do. One, you can try to mint gas tokens whenever the gas price is cheap. So for example, if I had minted these gas tokens back at the end of 2020, that probably would have been a good idea. Basically, whenever you think the gas price is substantially lower than it should be, or if you think that there should be more load on the Ethereum network in the near future, and when I say more load, you generally want to make it so that the amount of load is going to be more than double what it currently is. So if I'm looking at the gas price right now and it's at 100 GUI, then I would want to mint those tokens, assuming I believe it's going to get to something like 300 or 400 GUI, because if it only goes up a little bit, I won't be making money. Because when you mint these gas tokens, there are other fees that you're paying. You have to pay gas to actually mint these, etc. So you'll actually end up losing money initially. But again, you want to have the assumption that the gas price is going to go up in the future. So that's one way that you can make money, by minting gas tokens when the transaction gas fees are low, and then using them when it's higher, or selling them. And the second way that you can make money from using these gas tokens is just by speculating on the token itself. So I can go to the Chai gas token and I can make speculative trades on this token based on what I think the demand will be for these tokens, which is semi-correlated to the gas fees on the Ethereum network overall. So you can see that as the price of the gas on Ethereum has gone up, so has the token value as well. And it's not always going to be perfect correlation, because there are other factors playing into this, such as for the Chai gas token, since it's specifically built for 1inch, it's not going to be correlated directly to the gas fees on the Ethereum network. But if you look at something for a more broad use case, such as GST2, which is gas token 2, then this is going to be much more correlated to the overall gas price, because this is used for basically any transaction. And again, this is as far as I know. I'm sure I'm getting some small things wrong here, but the general idea is the same for all of this. Now, there are a couple of risks if you are speculating on the price of gas using these tokens, And mainly it's that these tokens are used as a temporary solution. The gas prices on Ethereum are something that the team is working on fixing. Ethereum is very much incentivized to make it so that the Ethereum network is more scalable and there could be more transactions per second. And the reason why gas fees are so high right now is because it's so limited by the number of transactions per second that if you can increase that and you can increase the amount of capacity, then the fees will be much lower. But until that's solved, these gas tokens will have a use case. So that's the first risk that you have for these gas tokens. And the second risk for these gas tokens is if for some reason they are no longer utilized. So you see a lot of these gas tokens, they have a specific use case, such as the Chai gas token by 1inch. Let's say the 1inch exchange becomes much less popular. I assume that the Chai gas token would go down in value as well. And there are also other limiting factors, such as the price of Ethereum. If the price of Ethereum goes up, then people are going to be willing to pay less gwei in order to fill their transaction because now that gwei is worth more. So that's something you always need to think about. There are certain ceilings to the prices of these gas tokens because if it gets expensive enough, then people are going to stop paying that specific price. So if you do ever see a spike in the gas price for a reason that you don't think is sustainable, then that can be a great time to sell, such as some of these spikes back in September of 2020, or even these small spikes at the beginning of 2021, depending on what the price of Ethereum is, depending on what type of opportunities there are in the Ethereum world, etc. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about gas tokens and a potential investment opportunity that you can look further into if you so decide to, and see you all in the next one.